How does anyone, especially a young person, a young man, and if you look at the ages of all the lads who died in hunger strike, I think the oldest was 30. Most of us were all in our 20s, in fact in our early 20s. How does a person decide that he's going to go on hunger strike to the death? That he's not going to see his children anymore, as was the case with Bobby and Joe McDonald? That he's never going to have a normal existence, live in a decent house, go to Spain or Portugal on their holidays, or go skiing, or go to Croke Park and watch a hurling or football match? That normal existence was taken away from them. And you have to try and put yourself into the H blocks, into the environment that we were in. And that's why I say it was a completely different planet from the one that we live on here today.
When you make the decision to go on hunger strike, what are the things that you weigh up in your mind? Your family must feature uppermost?
Absolutely. The family is the foremost thing in your mind. Well, two things. First of all, if you go on hunger strike, you're probably going to end up dead. That's the first thing. And, you know, whatever effect that has on yourself, you know, in terms of your own sanity, for want of a better word. But you're right about the family, that is uppermost in your mind when you're making a decision about going on hunger strike. But the difficulty is that we were so determined and single-minded about what was required that we had to, in effect, sacrifice ourselves for the overall good of the struggle of our communities and for the people in Ireland in general, that we felt that whatever hurt our families suffered as a result of our dying on hunger strike would be outweighed by the greater good for the people of Ireland.
What about watching each hunger striker die? That must have been devastating, knowing that it's effectively failing.
It was difficult. It was very difficult. But as I say, you know, I was waiting at some stage to be called on to go on hunger strike myself. So my mind was focused on that. You know, people talk about the most vivid memories they have about the hunger strike, and people talk about Bobby Dan and Bobby being elected in Fermanagh and South Tyrone and stuff like that. In many ways, those aren't, you know, very vivid. I remember them, but they're not very vivid in my mind because I was so focused at the time on what I was going to do that I had to mentally prepare myself for what was coming ahead. And, you know, and in effect, we didn't really have any time in the H blocks. For those of us who were going on hunger strike ourselves, we didn't have time to grieve for our comrades who were dying at the time. And it's interesting that Danny was so emotional when he was talking today. It seems to be that the further you get away from it, the more emotional those of us who were involved get about the whole issue. And, you know, it's a thing, I think, when you're psyching yourself up, preparing yourself to go on hunger strike, you haven't time for emotions about anything else that's going on around you. You're just totally focused on the job that you have to do. You're going on hunger strike, you could be going on hunger strike to the death. Nothing else matters. There's a battle here, there's a battle with the Brits, battle with the British government. The future of the struggle is at stake. That's what we had to prepare ourselves for, and that was the frame of mind that I was in.
When you see Bobby Sands die, does it ever cross your mind that the protest wouldn't end until 10 men had died?
At the time, even in advance of the first hunger strike, we went into that there with a firm view that this could be very costly in terms of, you know, we could lose people before the British would move or before we would secure something that it was at least a sound enough accommodation to allow us to say, okay, that the hunger strikers could say, yes, that's fair enough. So even at that stage, there was a view that it would be costly. But at the beginning of the second hunger strike, that with the loss of Bobby Sands and the other hunger strikers, nobody could quantify how many men we were going to lose. I mean, it was a tragic period, and I mean, it ended in the manner at which it did, which was totally out of control of the hunger strikers themselves. But nobody foresaw that we would lose 10 people. Certainly, it was believed that we would have losses on that hunger strike, but nobody could quantify that it would be so many.
And I remember when it was my turn to go on hunger strike, I got a call from the leadership of the army, and it was addressed to volunteer Pat Sheehan. And in a way that made me stick my chest out, because whatever else, I had always taken great pride in being a volunteer in Oakley Naharn. And it was very unusual, you know, to be given your full title of volunteer. And then I thought about it, and I thought, well, when else do you see the title volunteer in front of someone's name? And it's usually in the obituary columns or on a headstone in a graveyard. So when I read that column, and I'm just paraphrasing it, but what it said was, you're bringing the movement into direct confrontation with the British. If you have any qualms about what you're doing, if you don't feel sure that you're going to be able to follow it through, step aside now, and no one will think any less of you. And even though I had already taken the decision to go on hunger strike, I had to swallow hard, because there was, in black and white in front of me, you will, if you follow through with this course of action, you will be dead within a couple of months.